The Parthenon was built in the 5th century BC. Today, it still stands on the hill above Athens. During the same era, China had its own grand palaces and walled cities. Not one of them survived. The oldest existing timber structure in China dates back barely 1,000 years. One civilization built in stone, the other built in wood. The choice of material seems simple. What lies behind it is anything but. It reflects two fundamentally different ways of understanding life, time, and what it means to last. First, a common misconception needs correcting. The Chinese were not incapable of building in stone. The Great Wall is made of stone. The tomb of Qin Shi Huang is made of stone. The underground chambers of emperors across every dynasty used the most durable materials available. The Chinese fully mastered stone construction. But they reserved stone for two purposes: fortifications and tombs. City walls were built in stone because they needed to stop enemies. Tombs were built in stone because the dead would never return, so their resting place should endure forever. But the spaces where the living dwelled, palaces, residences, temples, were built in wood. This was not a limitation of skill, it was a cultural choice. In the Chinese worldview, wood is not merely a building material, it is a symbol of life itself. In the traditional system of the five elements, wood represents growth, spring, and vitality. A tree grows from a seed into a towering trunk. Then, after it is felled, it becomes a roof beam holding up the ceiling of a family home. Even after being shaped into a structural member, its grain, its scent, the way it expands and contracts with the seasons, all give the sense that this is a material still breathing. For the Chinese, it felt natural that the living should dwell in houses made of something alive. Stone was cold and still. It belonged to another world. Chinese culture also holds a fundamentally different attitude toward permanence. At the heart of Taoist thought is the principle that all things are in constant flow. Nothing is meant to last forever, nor should it try to. Flowers bloom and fall, dynasties rise and collapse. A building goes up and one day it comes down, and then another one goes up in its place. What matters is not whether a particular building can survive 1,000 years, but whether the knowledge and craft behind it can be passed on. A Tang Dynasty carpenter would never have thought, I want to build a palace that will still be standing in 1,000 years. He would have thought, I want to teach my apprentice every technique I know so that he can teach the next generation after him. The building is temporary, the craft is eternal. European culture followed a completely different logic. From ancient Greece onward, stone was never just a material, it was a declaration. When the Athenians built the Parthenon, they used marble transported from quarries more than 10 kilometers away, not because there was nothing closer, but because this building was to represent the glory and strength of the city-state, and it demanded the finest stone available. In the Greek and Roman tradition, the greatest gift a person could leave to posterity was a building, a triumphal arch, an amphitheater, a temple. Your name carved into stone outlasts you. As long as the stone stands, so do you. This was a cultural logic of achieving immortality through physical matter. The arrival of Christianity pushed this logic to its extreme. A great cathedral was not just a building, it was a gift to God. God is eternal, so anything offered to God must aspire to eternity as well. Cologne Cathedral took 600 years to complete. Generations of workers entered the construction site knowing they would never see the finished work. But they did not mind because what they were building was not a house for themselves, it was a dwelling for the eternal divine. This devotion to physical permanence has no direct counterpart in Chinese culture. The Chinese revere heaven, but heaven does not need a stone house. The Chinese honor their ancestors, but ancestors require incense and memorial tablets, not an everlasting monument. These two attitudes produced entirely different outcomes. The historical record of magnificent buildings destroyed in China is staggering. The Yipeng Palace was burned by Shang Yu. The Daming Palace, once the largest palace complex in the world, 3 times the size of the later Forbidden City, was destroyed when Huang Chao sacked Chang'an. Capital after capital was burned in war, then rebuilt by the next dynasty. Not every building was lost, of course. The East Hall of Foguang Temple in Shaanxi survives from the Tang Dynasty. The Yingxian wooden pagoda has stood for nearly 1,000 years. But these survivors prove precisely that they are exceptions. A timber building lasting more than a few centuries is extraordinarily rare in Chinese history. Yet the Chinese never seemed anxious about this, because timber architecture possesses a quality that stone does not. It can be repaired, renewed, and kept alive generation after generation. When a beam rots, you replace it. When a pillar weakens, you prop up the structure and swap it out. The entire building functions like a living organism, continuously replacing its own body while retaining the same structure, the same mortise and tenon logic, the same building principles. The Yingxian pagoda has stood for nearly a millennium, not because its wood does not decay, but because every generation of craftsmen knew how to keep it alive. What the Chinese passed down was never a specific building. It was the wisdom of building itself. Master to apprentice, apprentice to the next apprentice, one system of joinery handed down across dozens of generations. A palace can be burned to the ground, but as long as the craft survives, the same palace can rise again at any time. The European choice carries its own power. When you walk into Cologne Cathedral today, you touch the same stone that a craftsman laid with his own hands 600 years ago. That physical connection across time is something no other method can replicate. Two cultures face the same question: how to be remembered by those who come after. One answered, build something strong enough to outlast everyone. The other answered, teach the next generation how to build, because buildings will vanish, but the ability to build will not. One kind of permanence is solid, carved in stone, unchanged across centuries. The other is fluid, like a river. The water keeps changing, but the river remains.